My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a one-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother //SIL were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway. I am a 19-year-old man. On Thursday, a person I had a major crush on in high school, but who rejected me, messaged me out of the blue. She had never contacted me without my contacting her first. And at one point I realized she had me blocked on social media, and so I found it odd that she was suddenly being friendly. After sending a couple of greetings / questions about how I've been, she said that she was going to have some people over and wanted to know if I would get the beer. The drinking age where we are is 19, and she and the people who were going to chill were all 18. The liquor stores in my area all card. I thought it was silly that my being a month older meant I could buy liquor and they couldn't, and so I said I would love to go. She said, "Thanks, I'll pick you up at 7. 7 o'clock rolled around, and she texted me to say she was in front of my house. I went out dressed and ready to chill with some people, and she drove me to the liquor store. When we got there, I asked what beer she wanted me to get, and she told me to get Budweiser. I hid my disappointment as well as I could, but it was her party so I went in and bought 2 cases of 24. I got back in the car and said, "Let's party," and she was eerily quiet. I noticed that she wasn't driving towards her neighborhood, but rather back towards mine. I thought she had moved or something, but didn't want to press the issue. When she turned down my street I finally figured it out. She was being purposefully vague about the invitation because she wanted me to get the beer. But she wanted a way out when she told me I wasn't actually invited in the first place. She stopped in front of my house, leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thanks," in her best voice. I deadpanned her and asked when she was going to tell me I wasn't invited. She feigned surprise and said that she never intended to invite me in the first place. I sat in silence for a long awkward minute, picked up the beer, and walked towards my front door. She got out of her car and frantically tried to re-invite me to the party, but I told her that what she did was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. I opened my front door, slammed it a bit too hard, and came back to my room. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her, don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess, and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with Bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, we like this place and have no solid plan. I freaked out and was like, you guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister. Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. My wife and I have a 2-year-old son and have been married for 4 years. Our anniversary was a month ago, and we found a nice, secluded cabin on Airbnb and rented it out for a long weekend getaway. My wife asked her parents if they would be willing to watch our son, and they agreed as long as we dropped him off at their house. That worked for us since it was on our way anyway. I was raised Lutheran and my wife was raised Catholic, but neither of us currently go to church and have not had our son baptized. My mother-in-law knows this and hates it. She thinks our son needs to be baptized or he will burn in hell. She's that kind of Catholic. So we go on our trip, and when we pick up our son and ask how the weekend went, mother-in-law says everything went fine and that she has saved my son's soul from the devil. I ask her what she meant, and she says she had our son baptized that morning at her church. I tried my best to keep my cool so I didn't scream at mother-in-law in front of my son, but I pretty much grabbed my son and left. On the car ride home I was fuming and told my wife as calmly as I could that this would be the last time her parents have our son unsupervised. She tried to downplay what her mom had done, but I told her we need to wait until we get home to talk about it because I'm not fighting in front of my kid. When we got home and had a chance to talk about it, things got heated. I told my wife I no longer trust her parents with our son, and that if they did something like this behind our backs, I can't trust them to respect our wishes as parents in the future. I said this was a huge breach of trust and I will forever look at her mom differently. She continued to try to defend her mom, saying that she was only doing what she thought was best for her grandson. She even downplayed it by saying that it's just a little water and a few words and we don't go to church anyway, so what does it matter? I told her that under no circumstances will I allow her parents to watch our son by themselves again. I said that we can still let them see their grandson, but only if we are present. I also said that if she doesn't see what the big deal is with this situation, that maybe we aren't on the same page as parents and maybe we need to see a counselor. She started crying and said that this isn't the kind of decision I get to make on my own, and I'm an asshole for trying to tell her what kind of relationship her parents can have with our son. I told her that I no longer have any trust or respect for her parents and that I don't know If there's anything they can do to repair that. I told her what her parents did was unforgivable in my eyes, and they put themselves in this position to lose privileges with our son. She's been trying to convince me to change my mind for the last month, but I'm not budging. To me, this is a hill I'm willing to die on.